Joining me is Russell Smart, Task Force Chairman of the National Scouting Museum Task Force, a member of the Ranch Committee here at Philmont, and we're back from the summit here at the National Scouting Museum at Philmont Scout Ranch, and today we're going to talk about World Jamborees, particularly those that occurred right after World War I. So Russell, how did the Jamboree idea come about and why 1920?
Well, originally Baden-Powell wanted to have a Jamboree in 1917. But World War I, the Great War, not yet known as World War I, prevented that from happening. So after the war ended, then he restarted his plan to have a World Jamboree and scheduled it for 1920.
And where was that first Jamboree held?
It was in near London, England, in Olympic Hall, just a big indoor-outdoor facility that was there.
Was it really just a big social gathering? Was it competitive? What was it organized like?
Well, there were a lot of different things that happened, Harold. It was certainly a social time for scouts from all over the world to get to meet each other and see each other. But it was also a time for each country that participated, and there were over 50, to demonstrate particular things about how scouting was working in their country.
Here at the National Scouting Museum, we've just installed a brand new exhibit on World Jamborees, and some of the things that are on display are related to those first 5 Jamborees.
Correct.
So when you said that it was kind of a social gathering and a place for fellowship with scouting, how were the U.S. Scouts identified and recognized for that participation?
Well, interestingly, there was not a lot of patches or insignia yet at that time. There's a lovely poster that was used to promote that first World Jamboree in 1920, and we do have a sample of that in our museum inventory that's now on display. But for the U.S. Scouts, they had a patch that they wore on the sleeve of their coats, but when they got home, they got a beautiful red, white, and blue ribbon bronze participation medal, and we have a sample of that there on display here also.
Now, how rare are those participation medals?
Well, there were only 300-ish scouts and leaders who attended, so that's approximately the number that were produced. So they're very rare.
Now, the patch that they got was a felt patch that came from the United States. Did they get anything when they got to the Jamboree site in England?
No, interestingly, there was no thought given to having any souvenir patches. There were some stickers, there were certainly literature that was given out, handbooks, program guides, things like that. And only 1 or 2 countries even brought things for their own country. The U.S. was one, and South Africa was another, and Ireland was another. So 3 countries, as far as we know, were the main ones that brought some type of special insignia.
Now, I've seen a lot of film. There seemed to be a lot of pageantry associated with that first
Absolutely.
Jamboree. What was the reason behind that? Was it like a parade of nations, or?
Yes, again, it was to showcase scouting in the countries that participated. And some of the countries brought interesting things. The scouts from South Africa brought their mascot, which was a full-grown adult lion.
Oh,
and
wow.
They paraded around the Olympic Hall with their lion mascot.
That's kind of cool. So the 1920 Jamboree is about fellowship, brotherhood, getting to know fellow scouts around the world at the end of the Great War. How about 1924? Same idea?
So the second Jamboree was a championship. Baden-Powell agreed that it was in Denmark, agreed that it would be an opportunity to have somewhat of a scouting Olympics and give scouts from the different organizations a chance to compete in scouting specific skills. And the U.S. approached it, as we often do, with great fervor. We're in it to win it, as we say. And so there was a competition all around the country for those scouts who wanted to attend that second World Jamboree to get to attend. So you couldn't go just because you wanted to. You had to compete to earn a spot, and there were only 56 spots available. 56 scouts and 4 adult leaders represented the Boy Scouts of America at that 24 Jamboree.
How did they get to these remote locations? I mean, they weren't flying long distance by that time. So
Correct.
What
They went across the Atlantic on ship and landed in England first and did a tour of England, and then went on to Denmark for the actual Jamboree. The King was there, Baden-Powell, of course, was there, Lady BP was there. So all of the dignitaries of the countries and those from the United States, our dignitaries, were also there from scouting. But it was travel by ship and train more than any other type of transportation.
We get there, we're in it to win it.
In it to
How
win
do
it.
we do?
Well, we didn't win every single competition, but we won enough overall that we became the world's championship troop. So we were in it to win it, and we won it.
And did they get any special recognition for that competition?
The contingent got a trophy for being there were trophies for each of the different competitions, and then there was an overall winner trophy. So we got trophies for the competitions we won. We got a trophy for the overall championship that we won. Individual scouts, no, they didn't get anything while they were there, but when they got home, the fact that we had won the World Championship was cause enough for the BSA to believe that we should recognize the 60 individuals who did participate, the leaders and the scouts. And so there were special medals made, which were very rare, obviously, because there were only 60 of them. Each of them was made and then engraved with the individual name of the scout or adult leader, and they were sent to those local councils where those scouts and leaders resided, and the council was instructed to present it to them at some appropriate ceremony, some appropriate venue, and so all of them were handed out, but not as a group, individually, one by one by one, they were handed out. So those are very rare items. And there are certainly only a few of the 60 remaining in existence or in collectors' hands as far as we know.
We got a jamboree that's social, we've got a jamboree that's competitive, a world jamboree.
Right.
How about the third world jamboree? Where did it fall into the mix?
Well, not specifically because the United States won it, but Baden-Powell, as the jamboree was unfolding in '24, he came to the conclusion that this was not consistent with the idea of scouting as a world brotherhood movement. And so he said, let's not do that again. So in 1929, the Jamboree came back to England, to Era Park, and now it was back to, there were still scout skills demonstrated and pageantry and ceremonies and all of those things, but there was no competition. One country against another, that was over, and that has never been a part of a World Jamboree ever since then. Again, the boys who did participate did get a nice participation medal when they got home to commemorate their participation.
And then the next jamboree, how is that one different or the same?
It went to Hungary, so the difference in venue certainly made a big difference. But again, social, scout skills, pageantry, ceremony, parades, those sort of things. But again, no championship, no competition among countries. And again, the boys from the U.S. got a participation medal when they got home.
We're going around, we've been in Europe for all these so far. Where's the next World Jamboree after that?
1937, and this would ultimately be Baden-Powell's last. Because of the intervention of World War II and the things that were going on. In fact, there was a lot of controversy, a lot of things going on in 1937, not quite yet to the effect that it ultimately had on the United States, but Europe was coming. Mm-hmm. And so that jamboree in the Netherlands or Holland, that was again social, and there was good attendance, and there were a lot of scouts from the United States who went, from the Boy Scouts of America, but there was no competition. It was about fellowship and looking forward to some tough times that were going to come ahead. And Baden-Powell and Lady BP at that jamboree announced that they were retiring as the Chief Scout of the World and the Chief Guide of the World, and they would be going to Africa, to Kenya, to live out the rest of their retirement.
Here in the museum, we recently had a donation of a uniform that has a special patch on it from that jamboree. What makes that patch so unique?
Well, that patch is unique, and the uniforms here behind me. The 1937 was our first national jamboree. As you know, it was originally supposed to be 1935, but it got pushed off because of the epidemic, the polio risk that happened. And so when it got pushed to 37, then that made our first national jamboree coincide with the 5th World Jamboree. And so scouts who were going to attend the World Jamboree first came to the National Jamboree. They all camped together in preparation for getting on ship and going. But they actually came to the National Jamboree, did some training, and then immediately left for the World Jamboree. So it was a wonderful summer. for those scouts and leaders that got to participate in that. So we find occasionally uniforms like the one that we now have on exhibit, which has both the 1937 National Jamboree badge, but it also has a 1937 World Jamboree badge on it.
What's the significance of that particular patch?
Well, each of the World Jamboree badges had different color bars at the top. Some was one color, some were two colors. This particular one on this uniform is two colors, yellow and green, which was subcamp number 8, which was where all of the scouts from the Boy Scouts of America camped in subcamp 8. So any Boy Scouts of America uniform that has both patches, it will be a green and yellow bar badge on it.
And I understand that the what looks like an upside down tree is actually Jacob's ladder, and that had some significance to the Dutch.
Jacob's staff. Yes, Jacob's staff, and interestingly, one of the most precious artifacts that I believe we have in our National Scouting Museum inventory. At the end of that jamboree, because he was retiring, Baden-Powell gave each country, he personally handed to the contingent leader of each country, a Jacob's staff made of oak wood that he had specially constructed in order to do that. And so we still have our Jacob's staff that Lord Baden-Powell presented to the head of our contingent at that 1937 World Jamboree.
Now you mentioned that both the National Jamboree and the World Jamboree happened at the same time. And next year, that's going to happen with the National Jamboree and the World Jamboree. Has it ever happened any other time?
1957, we had both a National Jamboree and a World Jamboree, and that was sort of a special jamboree because there was one in 55 and one in 59, the normal 4-year spacing, but because it was the 100th anniversary of Baden-Powell's birth, there was another jamboree inserted there in England in 1957. So we had a national and a world in 57. But this anomaly that's about to occur next year in 2023 is only the 3rd time that that's ever occurred. And so we'll be having a World Jamboree in Korea, and we'll be having a National Jamboree at the summit in West Virginia.
That's actually kind of cool that it's happening another time, and I did not know about the inserted one in there for his birthday. That's kind of neat. Nice. Well, that's all the time we have for this time. Join us again as we continue to learn more about the history of scouting and the Boy Scouts of America through the collection of the National Scouting Museum and Artifact of the Week.